Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the simple and AI-powered rewards and recognition platform for employee engagement.
Failure is often perceived as a bumbling klutz in the ballroom of success, causing embarrassment and discouragement. However, by recognizing failure, we spotlight its hidden beauty. It becomes a stepping stone, a canvas upon which we paint our greatest achievements. By discussing the significance of recognizing failure and embracing a culture of learning and resilience, we infuse fresh air into our collective consciousness. We become a society of courageous learners, fearless explorers, and daring dreamers. We understand that failure is not the opposite of success, but an indispensable ingredient in the recipe for achievement. So, underscoring its significance, let's talk about recognition for failure, embracing a culture of learning and resilience. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Vantage Influencers Podcast, where we explore a wide range of HR topics that are sure to grab your attention and inspire you. I'm your host, Sanjeevani Saikia, and today we will be having a conversation with Nishith Upadhyaya, Executive Director, SHRM, India. Hi, Nishith.
Hi, Sanjeevani.
First of all, I would like to thank you for giving your invaluable time and joining us in today's episode. Before we dive deeper into today's topic, recognition for failure, embracing a culture of learning and resilience, could you kindly walk us through your corporate journey so far?
Fantastic speaking. And, at the outset, let me just say that this is some pretty amazing work that Vantage Circle is up to. Speaking and learning from previous experiences of corporate professionals is something which I have always found inspiring in my life, and way to contribute to this body of learning. I have around 18 odd years of experience, mostly within the domain of human resource consulting. I graduated from my master's in 2006, and if I were to look back, really that's been the start of my professional journey. From campus, always wanted to be in consulting. I had a stint in a fantastic organization in 2007, which goes by the name of Aisha Consulting Services, which was subsequently acquired by PricewaterhouseCoopers in their HR consulting organization. Did some fabulous work around talent management, org structuring, organization design, and any work which really involved enabling my client organizations to achieve their people strategy through to achieve their organization strategy through people. So did a corporate stint with Bharti post getting married, and I at this point of time always had a theory that with all the travel, consulting life would not be something which is sustainable. But when I went to Bharti, I realized that my first love will always remain, meeting up with client organizations, understanding their nuances. Moved out from Bharti, that's when SHRM also happened. Right now I lead the HR advisory practice for SHRM in this region. As a practice, we offer human capital advisory solutions to clients across the region, and for us, the region is Middle East and North Africa, India, as well as Southeast Asia. So doing a lot of work, mostly in the space of learning and development and L&D consulting, and with some very interesting organization transformation and change management projects thrown in for some key clients, and some one-off workshops thrown into the mix as well. So that's what I do. Our practice has seen fabulous growth for the last 7 to 8 years, and I'm very happy to say that I work with an excellent team, and every day they sort of inspire me to come in and do the best for them, so that they in turn can go ahead and deliver the best value for our set of clients. So that's really been my corporate journey, Sanjeevi.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, Nishith. It has truly been remarkable. With that context in mind, can we now dive straight into the topic?
Sure, happy to.
Yeah. Nishith, I'm sure you must have witnessed that failure in our society is often stigmatized and regarded as a source of embarrassment and inadequacy. Our prevailing mindset associates it with personal shortcomings rather than recognizing its inherent value as a stepping stone to progress. But somewhere we all are aware that failure is an essential catalyst for growth and learning. So our listeners would be interested to know how you view failure. And can you share an example from your personal or professional life where you have experienced a significant failure?
Yeah, so here's the thing, in the line of work that I do, interestingly, and I believe this is true for almost every other line of work as well. Yes. Interestingly, it's something you end up working for, let's say, about maybe 5 to 6 projects or large enough projects in a year. And as you look back on your time spent across those 17, 18 years of consulting that I have been in, I realized that it's the projects which actually have not gone off well, either from a client's perspective or from my own contribution to the project's perspective. It's from those projects that I have actually ended up learning the most. Right? So the projects that end up going well, or the projects that we end up delivering almost flawlessly, which coincidentally is almost about, let's say, 98 or 99% of the work that we do. The learning from there is something which is very limited. But the projects which do not go off well, right, or at least do not go off well even partly, right, because there are a lot of these turnaround projects that you've also ended up doing which did not start off very well, are the engagements that you end up deriving the most of learning from. And those engagements are, as you look back, are the ones that you really welcome, because in some ways, yes, they sort of end up shaking some of the core beliefs that you've always had, the core approaches that you've had towards interactions, or certain belief systems that you had about client organizations, which got sort of challenged during those projects. And then, if one has sort of looked at that and reflected on those projects, one realizes that one derives the most learnings from it. So in many ways, as I look on to take more challenging engagements these days, I would welcome the ability to actually learn from some of these challenging projects and projects which may not go off well, or at least for some of the parts. True. Because that really enables me and my team as well to grow and expand their knowledge. So that's where it stands, really.
That's really interesting. Really appreciate you for sharing that with us. In order to cultivate a culture that embraces failure, I think, Nishith, leaders must first challenge the prevailing notion that failure is a reflection of incompetence or weakness. So by reframing failure as a valuable opportunity for growth and learning, leaders can create an environment where team members feel safe to openly acknowledge and share their values. This includes debunking misconceptions and addressing fears that hinder individuals from embracing failure. So I guess it is imperative to know, and actually I would like to know your take on, how can leaders effectively promote accepting failures within their teams or organizations?
It starts with planning, So if one ends up planning for meeting goals which have already been set up, or already something which has been expected of you in organizations, that means the margin of error that you're already building in for yourself and for your team right from the word go is very limited, right? So hence the mentality also starts building in for leaders where there is no space for either them or their team members to fail. As an alternate to this, if you look at the current way in which a lot of progressive organizations are looking at their the goal setting process, their ability to or plan for achieving what is supposed to achieve. They follow the moonshot methodology, or what is popularly also known as OKRs.
Yeah.
And one of the key focus of OKRs is that you look at absolutely overachieving and look at taking on goals which are in many ways almost scary and much beyond expectations, right? That the organization might have. And you start planning for that in a manner which is very realistic. So during this whole process, just at the beginning of it, what you're doing as a leader is you are building in that margin that even if let's say the 10x that has been achieved is not something which gets done at the end of the year, and even if you end up with a good 8x or a 6x, that's good enough. So and of course you will do that with a lot of lessons learned during the process, and that's perhaps most important. So the whole process of planning to set very ambitious goals is something which is very, very crucial. The second thing that leaders must realize when they do something like this is it sets in the mentality of people, or in many ways it frees up people to experiment, to bring in their best self at the workplace, right?
Yes.
And at the same point in time, they do so with a very clear idea of what is expected out of them, and how can they exceed doing what they are supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
So the whole process of looking at goals, tracking progress towards goals, becomes something which is inspiring, right? Which is really in many ways a celebration of efforts which have been put in, and understanding which efforts have really led to what type of results, right? And really being very clear about that process. So it's important for leaders to understand that if they are ambitious, that ambitious trickles down to the rest of the team, and it enables them to really bring in their best self to the work, and at the same point in time be very aware about what is expected out of them, and give them that space to really experiment. At the same point in time, some of the best leaders that we have seen in this domain are the set of people who again do not shy away from deeply reviewing and understanding the causes of failure, right?
Yes, true.
It's one thing if somebody has failed because somebody has tried to achieve a lot more and has stumbled. But at the same point in time, this methodology should not be misunderstood to say that leaders are not required to monitor, leaders are not required to really review and understand what really have been the causes of some of this failure. So if one of the reasons or the causes has been incompetence or has been a lack of efforts, so the whole process of coaching for corrective action needs to be put in very, very early into the system. So while this whole methodology seems very easy to implement, quite honestly, as I've worked with so many organizations helping them set up the goal setting process, it requires a very high degree of managerial capability, as well as the team's drive towards achieving their goals. So without that, it simply will fall apart. So it's important to have that as a word of caution as I encourage organizations to sort of plan big and then try and achieve more and more.
True. Nishith, at the very beginning, you have mentioned the importance of goal setting. You have mentioned OKR. So there are other processes like there is OKR, then there are planning pokers or scrums. So do you think all these goal setting techniques really helps in the longer run when it comes to tackling and fostering a culture of say where we really acknowledge failure, we accept failure? So do you think these processes really helps?
Yeah, see, very early on in my career, and when I started off, I was, of course, like anyone else, very keen to pick on, X certification and Y certification,
Yes.
And get into, this learning program about this psychometric tool or that goal setting process. But during one of those learning programs, in fact, this was shared not by the facilitator, but shared by one of the participants, where the participant mentioned that, look, there are so many tools to do something, but interestingly enough, a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? So if you are not aligned to the strategic direction of the organization, if you are not really sure about what the end purpose of your client organization might be, it doesn't matter what methodology or process do you really bring into the picture, right?
Yes.
In many ways, a lot of them, if not applied with the right intentions and with the right, the right fitment within their organization, culture and the way of working primarily, becomes more of a roadblock than anything else, right?
Yes.
So to answer your question, simply, yes, tools are important, but during the goal setting process, what is more important is simplicity. What is more important is to be able to drive clarity, right?
Yes.
What is more important is the basic discipline of regular follow-ups and, looking for alignment with the larger picture. And quite honestly, a lot of this is provided across tools. So while I love the tools like an OKR or even the methodology of putting in place big, hairy, audacious goals, it's important to do that with a lot of discipline and a lot of understanding about the organization's direction and being able to align their teams with it. So the methodology, quite honestly, like that earlier analogy, of a fool with a spool still being a fool, is secondary. What is important is that alignment to be built in, is what I believe.
Yeah, that was very well said. Nishith, could you share your take on what strategies can leaders employ to effectively recognize and encourage individuals to embrace and learn from failure? Since I believe that when leaders publicly acknowledge and appreciate the efforts individuals have put into their endeavors, even if they ultimately fail, it creates a culture of psychological safety. So would you like to share some key strategies here for the leaders?
So I think, Sanjeevani, you in your question itself have actually answered one of the reasons why it's important to look at failures with a different light.
Yeah.
Once one actually puts in place a realization that within the team, within the organization, that hey, it's okay to fail, right?
Yeah.
That degree of psychological safety already kicks in within the organization, right? Now, what I've seen a lot of progressive organizations put in place is really a process of almost celebrating the right type of failures, right?
Yes.
So one of the leaders that I knew, what they would do is that the moment there is a recognized failure from which there can be some learnings derived, that person would actually enable this person who was in charge of that particular project to talk about that particular failure, to talk about the methodology that was used, to talk about the client expectations, and also to talk about the learnings which were derived out of this whole process. Right? So this whole process of encouraging conversations around failure, encouraging learnings around failure, made sure that we were not making the same mistakes again and again. It ensured that we were making newer mistakes, perhaps, and in many ways that depicts growth, right? So that, to my mind, is a very successful strategy that can be taken on by organizations where we talk about failures very openly. Can we talk about the opportunity to learn from some of them, and also talk about the turnaround which may have been achieved. So that puts failures in a very positive light.
Yes. Nishith, I would actually like to know your perspective on, do you think social media platforms can help foster recognition for failure and create a supportive community? Because nowadays we see a lot of infographics where people are accepting and people are commenting that yes, failure will take place. So do you think social media platforms have actually helped us accept it better?
Absolutely. And in fact, there's so much inspiring stories from the SHRM universe itself. So SHRM offers the two most coveted certifications for HR professionals, which is the SHRM CP and the SHRM SCP. Now, these are two fairly rigorous examinations and credentials for HR professionals to hold. And interestingly enough, this incident happened a couple of years back when the L&D head of a large organization took up the SHRM certification, and you know what, she couldn't clear it, right? Now this lady, sort of put up a social media post about this whole incident. Talking about the fabulous experience that she had taking up the certification, talking about the learnings that she derived from not clearing, and sort of vouching there in that social media platform that she would come back much stronger the next time that she sit for that examination.
Yes.
Now that post was such a fantastic celebratory post, which involved actually her global CEO also posting on it, and I think that got like hundreds and thousands of observations and footfalls and likes, whatever you have.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, in exactly about 9 months of time, the minimum time frame on which you are actually allowed to reapply, that same person sat for that examination again and cleared it, right? So,
yes.
And then again there was the celebration. So social media platforms is just another way for human beings to sort of put up their thoughts, their feelings, and it's a very, very powerful tool for recognition as well.
It also leaves us inspired somewhere where we get to hear other people's story, their failures, and how they have overcome it. I think that is a source of inspiration for us as well.
Absolutely.
Nishith, how do you see the future of work? Are there any emerging trends or technologies that can support this culture of learning and resilience?
Yeah, so it's a quite an open-ended question.
Yes, yeah.
See, there are multiple directions in which an answer can take, but still let me try with some of my core beliefs and my what my value systems about management talks about, right? So
yes.
There are things which are rapidly changing. Okay, yeah. We have all been participants in this massive social experiment called hybrid work, where people are working very effectively in distributed teams. Tasks that were thought of as being almost impossible to work in a distributed environment is something which is now being taken up through various tools in a very effective manner. So for managerial folks, this is one of the period of biggest social experiment that has really happened, and it's happened quite successfully to my mind. And this is a trend which will definitely continue to define the future of redefine the future of work. Because while if I were to expand into this trend, while we had this period of time where everything was going hybrid, we now have a scenario where organizations are starting to pull back. Organizations also realize that there is that significant benefit of having a good balance between face-to-face as well as hybrid for people to take. And somewhere maybe in the next 6 months to a year, we will actually end up seeing this balance settle down very effectively. There are many things that a manager needs to do to be able to adapt to this particular reality. If I were to be quite honest, it's something that even I struggle with on a regular basis, because it's so much more easier to sort of have everyone sit across the chair, in the same conference room every morning, as opposed to meeting them only twice a week in this day. So adapting to this reality of virtual work is definitely one aspect. The second aspect is digital tools and the prevalence of digital tools in not just communicating but also monitoring and tracking work is something which has really taken off and really needs managers to be very, very well acquainted with and decide which tool is most effective for them. So gone are the days where communication was just an email. These days you would have communications across Slack channels. There would be updates coming from some project management tool, like a tool that you would have employed. People are very active on WhatsApp as well. So being on top of all the digital tools and being very clear about which tool is useful for what is really one way in which managers would need to be really adapt. And quite interestingly, SHRM has developed a fantastic program around enabling managers to be on top of their digital tools and understand which is good for what. So that's something which a lot of managers need to be strongly aware of as they sort of look at the future. And the third thing that I would like to say is something which really is very, very crucial for a manager right now, which is the degree of agility or the degree of working with options, the degree of working with some backup plans, scenario planning. And that's very crucial, because the world is really changing at a fast pace and you never know what's just right around the corner, right? Maybe it's a disruption from a standpoint of another pandemic lurking around the corner, or even a war, which kind of starts impacting some of your revenue flows. So as a leader, you've got to be able to anticipate some of these disruptions, and that causes you to be much more agile as you go forward. So those are the three things that I would feel impacts the future of work and requires every manager to be so much more prepared. One, really, and quickly summarizing, one is the degree of agility that's required to be prepared for changes. Two is being more conscious about the digital tools that one uses, and the third is really getting comfortable with achieving the right balance which suits your organizations from a standpoint of hybrid work.
Yes. Although it was an open-ended question, but you have answered it very thoughtfully. So thank you, Nishi. We have reached the end of today's episode. Do you have any message for our listeners? Our listeners would be delighted to hear it from you. Also, our audience might want to stay in touch with you post this podcast. So it would be great if you could tell them how they can reach out to you.
Fantastic. So for all the listeners, I would urge them to look at two things. One, of course, the things which are changing, right? The things which are rapidly altering, which is impacted by external forces. But at the same point in time, there are a few fundamentals about work that do not change, right? And those fundamentals, if I were to list down, is one that regardless of how many digital tools or decision-making tools that one has, fundamentally, managerial work is about making decisions. It's about you being decisive and taking a call between alternatives that have essentially been thrown out by various factors. And digital tools are just one of those factors, right?
One of them, yeah.
So having decisiveness in your judgment call is something which is absolutely not changing, will not change, even in the generative or ML-led world that is so being talked about. The second part, which is fundamental and will not change, is the fact that your role as a manager keeps changing as you grow within organizations. Right? As you shift from being, let's say, a first-time manager to a manager of managers, to a business leader, there are some fundamental behavioral changes that you need to bring in, and that's not going to get impacted by the next disruption. That's not going to get impacted by the next pandemic. That's something which is absolutely not changing. So,
Yes.
Are you equipping yourself to be able to demonstrate the type of behaviors which are required to be demonstrated at different levels in the organization is something that one should ask oneself as a question. And that is something which is, again, absolutely not going to change. So those are a few beliefs, that I feel are not changing, and one needs to equip oneself as one is prepared. Where can one reach me? I'm very active on my organization's LinkedIn. So just search for me at Nishith Upadhyaya. You'll find me there. I'm of course there at all our SHRM conferences and events, and we'll be very happy to catch up with all the folks out there. So look forward to meeting up with you there in person or connecting virtually on LinkedIn as well, right?
Yeah, wonderful. Nishith, it's been a pleasure to have you as our guest today. Your insights and expertise have been invaluable, and we are grateful for the time you have taken to share your knowledge with our listeners. So thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Nishith. It was wonderful to have you.
Very happy to be a part of this. Thanks, Sajidi.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.